All right, this is a wonderful opportunity to talk about personal image in digital era. Actually, I just learned another more vivid word to describe personal image from Zach, our second speaker today. It's called human peacocking. This is a cuter word for personal branding. Anyway, so in this project, we study whether social media personal branding improves job market performance in the context of executive employment and compensation. The idea of personal branding has been extensively discussed and widely exploited by practitioners. On Wikipedia, personal branding is described as an ongoing process of creating a desirable image or impression in the minds of others about an individual. The rise of social media platforms, such as Twitter, in the last decade, has turned this inspiring idea into a powerful technology within the reach of almost everyone. For managers, personal branding is becoming a necessary skill. As a recent Forbes article concluded, personal branding is no longer an option. It's a powerful leadership enabler. However, the same article actually also emphasized that personal branding on social media is a full-time commitment to the journey of defining oneself as a leader and should be carefully considered before starting. Using personal branding, individuals strategically present themselves to establish a desirable identity and remedy a damaged one. Executives manifest self-serving bias, which means they intend to project situationally appropriate responses in order to heighten the public perception of the correlation between good performance and their abilities, and rebut perceptions that may hinder their career development using the dog ate my homework approach. And executives can attribute any failure or mistakes to external causes. Executives may find all sorts of excuses, blaming the international regulation, blaming the pandemics, etc. They just cannot acknowledge that they didn't do the right thing at the right time. So undetected, such a tactic may lead to a favorable perception of one's competence. However, personal branding can be a double-edged sword because overly used, it may backfire by causing social rejection and doubt. A self-promoter may appear to be conceited, self-aggrandizing, or narcissistic, and in turn arouse feelings of dislike. So here is an example. This is the Twitter account from Ms. Warren, who was the senator of state of Massachusetts. She also ran for the presidential campaign in the last round. And she frequently promoted herself on Twitter. And a voter replied to her saying she appeared to be a narcissistic, and he is sad to see her promoting herself. And he's not very pleased to see her self-promotion activities online. And this Mr. Brown ended his tweet with a sobbing face. The heightened interest in personal branding from practitioners in social media era naturally gave rise to the question as whether individuals' personal branding on social media have any effect on their career outcomes. We studied this research question in the context of the executive job market. The answer to our research question is not straightforward, even though the benefit of personal branding have been touted by practitioners. Not only could the postulated benefit of personal branding be neglectable in practice, but it can also hurt one's job market performance if it's poorly implemented and causes dislike from potential employers. To empirically test whether personal branding works, we investigate how executives' personal branding activities on social media affect their compensation and job acquisition. Here, there are two career outcomes. We have the compensation from bargaining and employment outcome through sorting. The compensation ask for, and these two outcomes, they interact with each other. The compensation asked by the candidate acts as Compensation asked by the candidate affects the rank or attractiveness of the candidate in the eyes of an employer. And in turn, the attractiveness of a firm affects the compensation asked. So they are jointly determined. We will talk more about it, why this interdependence matters in our modeling. To measure executives' personal branding activities on social media, we actually focus on their usage of Twitter, which is a leading social media platform. Twitter's social broadcasting nature enables users to easily spread their messages to a wide audience, making it a natural platform for personal branding. Indeed, many celebrities rely on Twitter to broadcast their messages to millions of people in real time. We didn't use the other leading social media, such as Facebook, and now it's called Meta, and LinkedIn. We didn't use Facebook because it's mostly for personal communication among friends, where personal branding could be less appropriate and also less effective. Friends are more likely to share strong offline connections on Facebook than on Twitter. And personal branding is most useful when the target audience is not very informed. We didn't use LinkedIn either because it's a highly structured online professional network rather than a channel for broadcasting one's leadership image. And being very active on LinkedIn is a more proactive approach in considering other job opportunities, which could be too explicit and thus not very desirable for executives. Starting from 2015, LinkedIn offers people the flexibility of posting unstructured content, but that is after our sample period. So for this study, we use Twitter. Let's first check, what do executives tweet? Focusing on the S&P 500 executives' personal accounts, we collect 133,000 posts and made a word cloud out of it. Here is the image indicating the high frequency words appear in executives' tweets. We can see that except for expressing gratitude, the most frequently used words are largely work-related, such as team, business, right? We also have company, CEO, etc. And we present a sample account from our data. This is the account from the former CEO of Kanban Soup, which is the S&P 500 company. And he is now the founding CEO of Conan Leadership. We can see that this is his personal account, and the most recent tweet at the time we collect the data is about his current company, Conan Leadership, right? He's talking about leadership and working towards one's goals. Both of the tweets are related to his current company. For each account, we can check the description of the image and the description, and to make sure that this is the personal account rather than the official, the company's official account. And for each account, we collect the date joined. For this account is March 2011, and also the total number of tweets. We can see that within 5 years of joining, because we collect data in 2016, he already posts 12.7 thousand tweets. He's pretty active on Twitter. And we also collect the total number of tweets and total number of followers, because the total number of followers measures reach of personal branding content. For each account, we collect their tweets. Again, it's almost always about his company, Conan Leadership. We also collect the retweets. We can see that he retweeted from Professor Adam Grant, a professor from Wharton. This is a tweet talking about personal branding. Obviously, the CEO, he is interested in personal branding online. So clearly, executives, they do use Twitter as a personal branding channel. So knowing what they do online, we would like to construct a measure of personal branding. When evaluating the impact of personal branding on job market performance, we encountered several challenges. The first one, of course, is how to measure it, because executives, of course, they use Twitter to promote themselves. They also post about their their personal life. For example, one day on the beach. We don't want to include irrelevant information into our measure. So here we propose a novel measure that uses a natural language processing technique of topic modeling. Our personal branding measure is based on the unstructured text of tweets and their corresponding form and job descriptions. This automatic system enables Bayesian learning of underlying topics from the text, from the tweets. The goal of topic modeling is to automatically discover the topics from a collection of documents, meaning either tweets or job and form descriptions. The topics themselves are observed, while the topic structure, meaning the topics that are hidden, are embedded in the text, these are hidden structures. The central computational problem for topic modeling is to use the observed documents to infer the hidden topic structure. This can be thought as reversing the generative process, meaning what is the hidden structure that likely generated the observed collection, the observed tweets. Based on the learned topics, topic modeling algorithm represents and summarizes the semantic of tweets and job descriptions using a probabilistic distribution over a set of underlying topics. By treating the tweets and form job descriptions as a pair of documents, the distance between the topic distribution of tweets and the topic distribution of job descriptions would be a good measure of how job-related the tweets are. The smaller the distance is, the more job market-oriented the tweets are. So here we visualized one example at the right corner. We have the blue bars, which represent the topic distribution of tweets. We can see that the tweets cover mostly 3 topics. These are topic 6, topic 10, and topic 30. While the red bars represent topics covered by job and the form descriptions. We can see that actually the job and the form description cover topic 7, topic 10, topic 14, and topic 30. We can see that the tweets and the form job description, they do overlap with each other on topic 30, right? There is some overlap, meaning the executive is using Twitter to talk about work-related content, but the overlap is not very high. So in this example, his Twitter usage is not heavily job market oriented. In this way, we can come up with a continuous measure of how personal branding intensive one's tweets are, right? In this way, we can measure the job market related content from tweets. And secondly, we need to disentangle the effect of personal branding from its correlation with a candidate's unobserved personality traits. For example, confidence, degree of extroversion, right? These personalities could also influence job market performance. To this end, we exploit an exogenous shock to personal branding effectiveness due to technological upgrade by Twitter app. Such a shock enables us to investigate the job market response to personal branding that is unrelated to personality traits. We listed the major changes in the new version of the app, including a much faster loading time, push notification of the changes, and expanded tweets. In summary, Twitter's technological upgrade in 2012 significantly improved its usefulness as a platform for personal branding. This exogenous shock provides a source of identification because the technology upgrade shock affect different candidates differently. Those who didn't use Twitter for personal branding were not affected. However, for those who did rely on it, the more heavily they were using it, the greater the incremental changes in personal branding effectiveness they would have experienced. Therefore, by comparing the associations of personal branding on job market performance before and after the change, we can obtain some causal evidence regarding the personal branding effect. This identification strategy is especially useful in ruling out an alternative explanation of personality traits, because a potential shift in personality, if any, it shouldn't be affected by a technological upgrade of an app. And another challenge in assessing the potential impact of personal branding on an executive's job market performance is to properly model the mutual and exclusive nature of hiring process. The mutual decision arises from the fact that each firm prefers the most talented candidate among a pool of applicants, and every candidate will choose to join the dream company among all the offers they have gotten. And the exclusivity of hiring process originates from the interdependence among choices made by different agents. The decision of one company restricts another company's effective choice set to a subset of all potential candidates, because each candidate can only work for one company as a full-time executive. And finally, we need to model the fact that former executive assignment based on their sorting and compensation determination, they are simultaneously determined. For example, a more desirable candidate has higher bargaining power in compensation negotiation, and the compensation level affects the assessment of a candidate. To meet this challenge, we developed a structural model where two job market outcomes are determined simultaneously. They are both endogenous. In the model, an equilibrium is stable only if it is the best response from both the firm side and candidate side, and both sides agreed on compensation. Consequently, both the compensation and assignment depends on the characteristics of all players on the market, not just the matches, the equilibrium matches we observed, but all the potential counterfactual matches we could have had in this market. So in modeling the sorting and the compensation negotiation, we include variables of candidates, variables of firms, and their match. So the variables for executives characteristics include age, education, unrealized compensation, and recent performance. We use the selective. We use how selective their undergraduate institutions are to quantify educational background. And unrealized compensation here captures the switching cost of job hopping, which is typically the present value of ongoing option the candidate could have had without a job change. For example, an executive voluntarily leaving a current employer will forfeit stock option or the spread if those options are not yet executable. And for the firm characteristics, we have the firm size, performance of the firm, risk, and corporate governance. Firm size is measured using the logarithm of total asset. We measure the firm performance using the firm's recent stock return, and firm risk is measured using the standard deviation of daily stock price for the past 3 years. Besides the aforementioned the financial variables of a firm, we also include corporate governance variables using the percentage of inside directors, because literature has found that board independence significantly increased the likelihood of firing CEOs for poor accounting or stock performance, while weak boards with lesser board independence fail to act against their CEOs when the performance is dismal. And we also construct two form candidate interaction variables to measure the suitability of a potential match. We use the industry-specific experience and social connections. A candidate's experience in the industry sector to which a company belongs is a key determinant of the candidate's fit with the firm. For social connections, we use the proportion of board members in a company who connect with a candidate due to overlapping work experience. And the reason why it matters stems from two perspectives. First, social connections reduce information search cost. And second, the social ties consider actions in terms of communal norms, facilitate interactions, coordinations, and trust, and lead to a favorable interpretations of one's intention. Having considered all of these variables together with personal branding efforts, by exploiting an exogenous upgrades of Twitter app, we detect evidence that personal branding can improve an executive's job market performance in both job acquisition, meaning the sorting, and compensation from bargaining. And if we compare personal branding's effect on these two outcomes, we can see that the effect is more salient for sorting, which leads to a more preferable position for the candidate rather than monetary rewards. Particularly in sorting, we found that personal branding can boost the chance of getting a dream offer by up to 30%. So the project has clear practical implications. The empirical results suggest that job seekers can generally consider social media personal branding to improve their job market performance. For those aspiring to become executives or executives seeking to further boost their career, the firm preferences revealed for personal branding and other candidate traits could be particularly relevant. For example, the firm's preference over social connections, right? And for social media platforms that help unleash the power of personal branding, this research also reveals a potential new business model. To a certain degree, LinkedIn's business model is already an example. However, we believe a more successful business model for a personal branding platform should go beyond a highly structured format and incorporate a social broadcasting nature. Actually, interestingly, as for now, Twitter is essentially providing its personal branding for free, especially to those enjoying the verified accounts, which is a premium version that certifies the authenticity of the account owner. However, those who produce high quality content for free on Twitter are also likely to benefit the most from Twitter's personal branding functionality. So in this sense, the free equilibrium could reflect a win-win situation for Twitter and its personal branding active users. So whether and how to incorporate a personal branding-based business model into Twitter's overall business strategy is an interesting question. That's all we would like to share today. If there is one sentence we would like you to bring home, that is to consider branding yourself on social media for building your career. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Yanzhen. Very nice results. Any questions from the audience? I'm curious, since your one sentence takeaway is consider branding yourself and social media, is there any restriction to that conclusion? Do you see any limitation of or any boundary whereby we might not want to do that from your study?
Yeah, that's Yeah, that's a very important question. Actually, we were trying to see what is the threshold when personal branding could go wrong, and is there any like condition for people to adopt that strategy? And so, with some heterogeneity analysis, we found that it actually contingent on people's recent performance. It works for those outperformers and those who whose performance was really not so good for the past for the past period. And for people in the middle, personal branding, what personal branding can do is very limited.
Interesting. But then how do we compare against what does it mean by good performance or average performance though? Because for me, I might think I'm average, but turns out maybe I'm even worse than average, right?
No way. Then I'm out of the market.
Yeah, but how do we assess that? Is there any guidance?
Yeah, for executives, I guess that's intuitive because executives, we can measure their performance using for example, return on equity during their tenure. And if it's a chief marketing officer, we can use sales growth for the past period, and then we can. And this number is luckily comparable within the industry or even across industry, so we can actually rank people.
I see. Very good. I have a question from Joseph Zhang in the chat room, and he asked, "How do you conceptualize or operationalize the pricing model?"
Oh yeah, I saw it. How do I conceptualize the pricing model? Yeah, so the pricing model is the negotiation between the firm and candidate, right? So that it's gonna be a function of the firm's characteristics, the executives' characteristics, and their match. The intuition is if the company is of large size and of high growth, the company probably can afford a lot. And if the executives, they are like one of the stars in the industry, then probably their bargaining power is high. And of course, there's always a match between each other.
Very good. I have another question from Devlin. She's asking, how do we balance and avoid being too high profile when you are trying to brand yourself in social media, taking notes that in the Chinese culture, many people like to be low profile. So in other words, I guess a deeper issue here is, would this really work in Chinese culture?
Right, that's a key observation. With Chinese culture, our threshold might be different. And maybe before we fully implement such a strategy, we can run a similar empirical study on Chinese on Chinese version of LinkedIn or our social media and see how well this strategy is received within our culture.